let's see.
Can we see if anybody's joined?
Comments. I don't think anyone is. So they can't join until we start it. So.
Oh, we haven't started.
So now it starts. So I've been on for 10 seconds. Where's the event? Is your live? Yeah, people are joining. All right, we're gonna get this started. So good morning, or maybe even good afternoon for some of you, depending on where you're logging in from. I am not Manuel, as you can probably notice. My name is 𝗂𝗁𝗵𝗶𝗹, and I do the marketing here at Milc Group. And first of all, I just want to thank everybody for joining this Facebook Live. This is the first time we've done this, so we're learning as we go. I hope you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, please put a comment in the box. So we know what's going on, but I think we are okay right now. Before we get started and I turn it over to Manuel, I just want to give everybody a quick reminder that this is not a sales pitch. We're just doing a conversation about everything going on in the industry. AI is a big talking point, what's going well, what's not going well, what you guys want to see from the industry, tech that's up and coming that you may have heard about. Nothing is off the table. So if you have questions, or even if you have an insight perspective about something that is being talked about here today, put it in the comments and we'll bring that up to Manuel. So I'm going to turn it over to him now, and he's going to start off talking about the big buzzword of the year, which is artificial intelligence. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad about it, and a lot of things that we just don't know. So he's going to try to talk about some of the misconceptions that maybe dairy producers don't know about AI and how it can actually help the dairy industry into the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Manuel.
Well, hello everyone. We're trading chairs, so thank you all for taking time to connect. As he said, we've never done this before, and hopefully this goes well. He's going to ask some questions, I think, that we've been given, and then if there's more, please add them to the comments, and we'll get them answered the best we can.
So if you want to start with AI and some of the misconceptions around it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about AI. You know, it's impacting our lives already. Many of you may be using AI and not know it. For example, some of the stuff that's done, Google searches and some of the other things, there's been some early adoption of AI on trying to help look at information that you may be gathering. So AI is also kind of a misnomer. It's not quite you know, a humanoid that thinks like a human and acts like a human. It's all trained. It's all built based on software developers giving conditions and things like that. So there's a, you know, this is not quite iRobot as they as they say with the movies. There are a lot of things to think about when you do AI. One is to be careful. Like anything else, when you search data, and if the question leans you left, right, or far away from the actual answer you're looking for, you can end up with a bad answer. And so this is something that we pay a significant amount of time thinking about. What is the data? How is it related? What kind of information are we trying to answer? That's the hard part. We don't build our own quote-unquote AI or neural network where it does all of the thought process. What we do is we structure the information in a way that's very accessible. And then, just to give you an image or a visualization, is we build a dictionary, encyclopedias, something that relates information, explains what information is, so that when AI goes and does analysis, it understands what it means, or how it's connected or how it's related. So it's really, really important to get that right. So data structure, the dictionary or the encyclopedia really becomes the driver on the results. And it's quite difficult sometimes to try to look at connection of data points that not always we think about. You know, where does weather connect to an animal, and how that relationship exists, and what those outcomes, what you're trying to answer when you ask some questions. Our AI is called Mira. We wanted something that was easy to discuss with our customer base, obviously. And then when a question comes out that maybe we're struggling with, we can indicate where that issue needs to be resolved, or maybe some more clarity. There is a process of what they call learning, and that is a feedback loop between the customer asking a question and maybe we don't truly understand it. And so we capture those things and then build the dictionary into that answer. The other really important thing to note is that, and I was in a meeting not very long ago where they talked about, why don't you just add ChatGPT to the system? Well, we never want to do that. Milc Group has a firm rule that the dairy producer owns all data. We own none of it. And we don't want AI sitting somewhere on the outside where people can ask questions of your data and expose it outside. So think of our AI sits inside of a vault of all of our data that we store and protect for you. And that's really, really important. You never want to be able to accidentally share anything that ends up your intellectual property. So we take that very seriously. And so it's all encapsulated inside the data model that we created, and does not access anything outside. If we ever do anything where, for example, a dairy producer may want to say, hey, I want to look at the current markets, you know, protein markets, cattle markets, whatever, and use some of that information, these would be separate models. The outside model would go and collect, and it would talk directly to a very secure communication between the internal AI and share that information, but never going out. So it's only coming in as a resource. So, you know, that's again trying to protect the information that is owned by the dairy producer. I've been doing tech in dairy for a long time, grew up on dairy, managed dairies. I've been in the tech side for 30 plus years, and I've never seen anything move this fast. I'm very connected to where we're going, why we're going there, and how fast we're going to go there. And I've been watching, we've been watching AI for more than a year. Interestingly enough, let's say a year ago we thought we could not do it yet because of cost and some of the structure changes that were happening with AI. And a couple of months later, we can do it, and we're going. So that flipped from not feasible to very feasible in a very short order. I would say that the models that we use, these are models we don't build. These are, Elon Musk and ChatGPT and all these others spend a lot of time, money, and effort to do these, build these up models. We're already on our 6th or 7th model switch because they're progressing so fast. In about 6 or 7 months, I think we're on our 6th or 7th model. And so we've built it in a way that we can plug in, unplug, plug a better model in, and as it improves and changes, that we get to elevate its intelligence pretty quickly. So again, I think the solutions that dairies will have the availability to in the very near future, simply because of AI, is when we look at interactions with software on a dairy, quite often they're complex. They've been notoriously PC based. They're complicated. They're hard to teach, and we've spent a lot of time and effort in making it very, very logical or intuitive and easy to use. And that was a huge part of the strategy to really use intelligence on top of that ultimately. And so if you think about the way this is all trending, and I would say this is going to happen very fast. We're releasing our 𝗵𝗆 in January. We've put it out on a few farms today to get the feedback and help the model learn. But imagine your employees on a dairy with an earbud in their ear, a device in their pocket, and they're just having conversations. You know, tell me about cow 1, 2, 3, dry cow 4, 5, 6, or I'm breeding this cow, or I'm doing a vet check, and literally just having a conversation. And the employee has their hands free to do whatever they need to do, whether get over a fence or, you know, move a cow or whatever. And that's where we're going to be in a very, very fast approaching speed. I mean, again, it's lightning speed in its evolution. So you also can think about the abilities of AI to analyze a lot of data in a very short period of time. And if we've defined the dictionary or the encyclopedia really well, fairly quickly you'll be able to do things like, hey, I'm a little concerned with our repro. Could you give me an analysis of our reproduction? And it would go through, look at all the data, and give you back feedback to say, you know, maybe you had low heat detection rate, or you had a bull that had a low conception rate, or you have an employee or a service provider that's struggling with conception. So you start to get this interaction between the information and the employee or the manager. And the way that we're building our systems is it's really broad. So we have feed management, herd management, facility, we'll have farm, we'll have a lot of other things that AI can do analysis, because the goal here is cause and effect, right? I have this effect, what caused it, and AI will be able to look through the data set into what caused the problem that I now have an outcome that I'm unhappy with. And so it's going to be very powerful. For the employee, if you think about AI, it's really going to be an assistant in my pocket and in my ear. Now I'm just in my own language, in natural human language, I'm communicating with the software or with the data and getting information as needed, or executing by basically telling it what to do. So it's really exciting, and we're really on the forefront of all that, and we're pretty excited about it.
Where else could you see AI entering the dairy industry other than software, like herd management or feed management? Where else could AI be a benefit in the dairy industry?
Well, some of the things that I'm pretty excited about is that when you think about robotics in the dairy industry, you think about the box robots, you know, that milk cows, or an arm that pre or post dips and things like that. But this is changing where robotics will be involved in dairy. And in January, we're meeting with a company that's going to be here for a week on the dog robots. And if you think about robotics, start thinking about the robotics that are available outside of ag. Think about manufacturing. Think about, I think Elon Musk has a plant that's pretty close to being online, I understand, that he wants to produce 1,000,000 humanoid robots for distribution in the public, all within a year. And you look at China and some of these other countries that are really moving towards this robotic world. Well, I'll tell you that we're going to have dog robots, humanoid robots, androids with AI, or drones with AI. I would say we'll see them in the dairy industry probably within the next 1 to 3 years. And there's a ton of stuff that these androids can do. The problem has been is that we need the AI of the data, the instruction, and the feedback loop of what they've done to integrate into the robot, or they're kind of dumb. They're just going to stand there, right? And so it's pretty exciting to see this evolution. You know, people are. It's funny. We had a discussion with one of the robotic companies, and they're saying we expect that within the next 3 years, robots will actually pull calves. And I'm like, well, okay, wait a minute, explain this. And they said, well, you know, robots are doing surgeries today. And if you think about a humanoid robot that has a sensor on their hand that can feel contractions, temperature changes, can hear, and, you know, it's not far-fetched to see that coming. And you think about dog robots from example of, you know, could they be the pusher on a dairy where they go get the animals of the next pen, because they can go on hindquarters, open gates, they can bring in animals, they've got all kinds of different sensors on them like LiDAR that they could look at feed bunk management, they could look at inventory. So there's a lot of really exciting things that we get to benefit because of other industries that are applying them already today. And it's not far-fetched in that there is a robot called Spot that's made by Boston Dynamics that is already being used at the 𝗁𝗁𝗁 plant in the Netherlands. And that dog essentially goes throughout the plant looking for air leaks, oil leaks, feet on the ground, security, making sure doors are closed, making sure that the employees that are there belong there, that you don't have people from outside your organization kind of breaking in, as it were. So you think about these things, and there's quite a bit of YouTube video because dog robots already exist in our military, and they do perimeter searches. They help execute on different things that the military does, especially in cases where things are unsafe. So you think about, you know, could I send a robot to go check some area where you have gases that are a little bit dangerous, right? They can sense the gases. They can go near lagoons and all of these different systems that we put in place today, right? So there's a lot of work that can be done by a non-human that are pretty repeatable, that would be perfect for robots. And so it's pretty exciting, and again, the AI build that we are creating allows the communication with the robot. So the robot has AI, we have AI, they can now communicate, instruct, and then get that feedback loop. So it's quite exciting.
AI is so new. I mean, it's new, it's evolving so quickly. How does an industry that sometimes adopts a little bit slower, how are we being able to adopt it so quickly when we do sometimes move a little slower?
Well, and this is always hard for companies like us as well. Yeah, dairy producers tend to want to validate, verify through friends or, you know, what happens in the market. We're having a lot of these conversations with dairy producers to really prepare them in that how fast this is moving. And I've used the analogy, and I don't know if it's a good one, but you know, quite a few dairies put beef on dairy, and some are only talking about it today, right? And it's the early adopters. You don't want to be bleeding edge, but you want to be cutting edge to take advantage of these things that happen. And I would just say, you know, dairy producers, go out and do a little research on how fast AI is changing, where AI is being used, what's happening with robotics, and pay attention to what we're doing. I think this is a time where dairy producers really need to say, okay, what companies do we bet on to really get us to what I believe is a huge evolution step that I don't think we've ever seen before? And is this the right company? Do I trust them? Are they doing the right things? And does it match my investigation of what's happening in AI and robotics? But I think the adoption rate is going to be very fast. I'm old enough to be around when I started with the software company in the dairy industry that I worked with before, where we had had no cell phones. Access to the internet was very difficult. Not everybody had access to it. So I've seen the transition on how fast people went on to cell phones and how fast internet became part of your businesses. This is 100, maybe 1,000-fold faster. And this is just going to happen so fast. As I said, as an example, a year ago, it wasn't financially feasible or the models weren't smart enough. 2 months later, we're starting to build it because it's changed that fast. And we're on our 5th or 6th model, 7th model. I exactly can't keep up how fast it's changing or evolving. So I would just say, do a little of your own research, but be prepared for this to happen very fast. And those who are early adopters, again, not on the cutting edge, but making sure that this is solid, that this makes sense, and that the investment makes sense, you're going to move really fast. There's a great podcast that I listened to recently with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. And Elon is stating that in 5 years, there are no apps and there are no cell phone. It literally is AI talking to a device that's only for visualization, and everything's a conversation. It isn't going to start in 5 years. We're having no phones and no apps in 5 years. So just to give you a little background on the speed in which things are changing, and to give you a little bit of, I'm not just making statements that aren't real, do a little investigation yourself.
AI seems like a big word. It seems kind of scary, but is it for everybody? Like when you think of AI, maybe it's just for these big companies, these big industries, these big dairies. Can AI be beneficial to even the little guys?
Yeah, and hopefully you can ask or hear that Jason's asking me some questions that are coming in. But the question is, is it for everyone or is it just for big dairies? And I would argue that tools that allow us to be efficient and better at doing our job is for all size dairies. Now, I think that technology quite often helps smaller farms more because the model of a smaller farm, a mistake has a much bigger impact than a larger farm. Sometimes there's a saying, efficiency comes with size, and some of that's true, but we're also much more intimately connected to a dairy that's smaller, and those tools can be better utilized sometimes. So AI is going to be prevalent in our world. The Elon Musk million humanoid robots is for the home use, cooking and chores and things like that. Yes, the Jetsons, if you're old enough to know that cartoon, we're coming quickly to that world. And if you can utilize tools, and a robot is not a human, it's like a hammer or any other tool. If you can utilize that to increase efficiency, lower your cost of labor, I think it's going to become a very important tool for all businesses, regardless of what you do.
Great. You've been spending a lot of time out on dairies the last few months, having conversation with producers and herdsmen and everybody out there. What are some of the challenges that they're facing? What are they wanting, and how can technology or whatever it may be help moving forward?
Yeah, I get out quite a bit, especially of late, simply because we've had so many things that we've developed this year that we're releasing, including AI and some other technologies. But one of the things that I think that we as business owners can get caught up in is, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve right now? And we look at that as well. We're trying to close gaps in the day-to-day management of a dairy, but we're also paying attention to what we need to have available to help you as quick as that technology makes sense for a dairy. And I think as business owners, we have to, as they say, walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to think about solving our immediate problems, but we also have to be looking far enough ahead to look at how do we solve some problems that we haven't been able to in the past. And so I don't know if this is necessarily answering the question, but it is a holistic approach. You have to look at the ripple to everything that we put in. Not all technologies are great, and they don't all have a great ROI or return on investment. And having those conversations with us and other companies to say, explain to us where this ROI is, it should be on us to try to explain that, but investigating and paying attention to the evolution. Again, I cannot say this enough, and I've been saying this, and sometimes this is hard to present because I am also a company, right? And sometimes it feels as though I'm trying to say something in the benefit of us, and I'm not. I'm really trying to help an industry that I personally love a lot, and so does our team, and that is, this is changing faster, and what you're going to see happen in the next even 6 months is going to blow a lot of our minds, and just being connected to that as a business owner is really important, so that you don't lose the opportunity of those improvements that will sometimes be the difference between making money and losing money.
Perfect. In your conversations and the experiences you've had, what are some trends or changes that you see that most producers may not realize are coming?
I'm not sure that I have an answer for that, other than this is about trends that I see that are coming that maybe we're not aware about. Outside of a lot of this technology, sometimes technology in our industry is built inside of our industry and is limited to, hey, we build these things for dairy, instead of saying we're going to go leverage technology that's built for the masses and use it for our benefit. And that's what Milc Group does a lot. We look at outside of our world called dairy and say what kind of technologies are out there that we should really be leveraging for the benefit of the dairy producer. And I think as dairy producers or owners of businesses or managers of business, go pay attention to those things, because when you have a market that sells to millions, it doesn't only lower the price, but it also increases its evolution, simply because the demand is much higher than what we may do in dairy. So, I think having some time to investigate outside of dairy and looking at the opportunity of taking advantage of that in dairy is pretty important.
What's one thing you wish that producers knew about simplifying their operation or managing their data?
Well, even with robotics, I think sometimes, and not on all places obviously, is that we don't really value the human as the asset they are. And a couple examples that I'll use is that quite often dairy producers or the management team is restricted to 1 or 3 people who touch their software. And this is part of the thing that we tried to cover a gap that we believe exists in the way that we're managing our humans. And that is that we don't charge for the apps. We want every single employee on a dairy to have access to information and the availability to do data entry. And what I've seen in my 30 plus years is that when we look at data trying to make decisions, we don't have all of the events that's happened on a dairy, so we're really kind of limited in the scope of information that we're trying to make really important decisions on. And what I mean by that is, you know, every time I see an animal off feed or looks ill or walking funny or may have aborted, not all of those data entry points get into the software because some employee has to write it down on a piece of paper, hand it to somebody, and it may or may not get entered. And eventually the employee just says, look, I'm not going to write it down. Nobody seems to care, and so I'm just going to do my job. Well, that's a lack of a full set of data or information to make really important decisions. And I think not pushing on the fact that all your eyes, those brains that are running around your dairy that can observe and record, have a really high value to making really big decisions, even more so now with AI. If I'm going to look at data and I said, I've got every event that any human has seen. I've seen an off-feed animal. I've seen an animal that didn't look right. I've seen an animal that was lame. I saw an animal that aborted, or I saw a feed that wasn't pushed in, or I saw it was too late to feed, and we're trying to cover with technology some of those things as well. But getting your asset, the human, out there, getting the data collection into will make AI that much more powerful. So I see that sometimes we see them a little bit as a liability rather than an asset, and I would like to see dairy producers really leveraging the, you know, quite often very, very smart people that you have running around your dairy.
Where are you seeing AI have the most impact on a dairy? Is it repro, strategic culling, more selective treatment management? Where's the biggest impact?
Well, it's also bridging. I think the biggest impact is probably leveraging your. It's the bridge between your human and information. That's going to be the significant change you're going to find with AI, and that is that, as I said earlier, you know, if I'm an employee, don't speak English, maybe I don't really understand the workings outside of the task that I've been responsible for, I'm going to start to learn a lot more about the business as I communicate. So think about that assistant, and I'm asking questions. Hey, what about this information, or what about this animal, or what about, you know, I've got a calf DOA loss, you know, how can I improve that, or, you know, how many animals have I treated in the last week and that survived, that got through, and what was the protocol we used? So all of a sudden, I no longer have to be a business analyst or a data scientist to start to understand my impact as an employee on a dairy, because AI is bridging the difference between my ability to understand something and the information and investigation or analyzation. So it's going to be really significant and really empower your employee to be a bigger asset to the dairy. But there's a lot of things that will happen with AI in bridging for example, the cause and effect, right? I use this as a simple example. We built a sensor for pulsation and looking at vacuum and pulsation. We have herd management. We have our own ID system. But if I can say, okay, Mira, give me all the animals that were exposed to an unhealthy stall, and I can now be proactive because the analytics would say, okay, here are all the cows that went into these stalls that we had a pulsation or vacuum issue, and here's the list of animals to go, maybe, you know, strip them, or go make sure over the next day or two that we don't have a mastitis problem, right? So it starts to connect dots that we haven't really paid attention to, or it hasn't been very easy for us to connect. So there's going to be a whole host of really different ways that we manage dairies simply because of AI.
Thank you. You've mentioned before, and this may have been covered, but You were saying employees don't have to know language or speak the language. Is AI going to be able to translate for them, or do they speak in their native language? How are you envisioning, or what are you talking about there?
Yeah, so one of the problems in all software is that you really have to understand it. You know, if you use Illustrator or Photoshop or some of the other herd management programs, it's complicated. It's its own language in itself, and you've got to know all these things. Well, think about if you've used Grok or ChatGPT or any of these other products, and if you haven't, go use them because they're pretty wild. It becomes a conversation. So I could ask questions of AI like, okay, explain it to me like a 3-year-old, you know, or a 10-year-old. What do you see in our reproduction, right? Give me analysis of that. And all of a sudden, I am just speaking in any language, in my native language, because AI will convert that into whatever we need in English to go out and look at the library and do all the research, right, or all the analyzation. So no longer is language a barrier. It doesn't matter where they come from other than you communicating with them, but they can speak in their native tongue, whatever that may be, and in a natural language. This is what AI is really good at, right? I just ask questions, and how we devise the communications in this dictionary or encyclopedia knows what those words mean and connect it to the data. So, you know, you could take somebody who's never been on our animal herd management, for example, and go ask questions that really doesn't know that much about dairy, and it will go figure out what you mean, or learn over time that you said box instead of pen, for example, right? It will start to learn those things and interpret those correctly. So the bridge between the human and information, or at least that big chasm that existed up until today, will go away and make it really usable in any language, in natural language, instead of some scripted, you know, you got to say it this way in order for it to understand. Now we have released Mira, or releasing it today in herd management, but it is moving into all of our products. Think of, you know, feed management, where I'm asking it about inventory and run out dates and intakes and error, and you know, hey, tell me where's the tank at today? What was wash? What was the pH on wash? And basically just having conversations to tell you the status of all of these different things that we're building, and that's huge, right? It becomes, again, a conversation for your consultants to help you solve the problems. This is where, you know, the analyzation isn't problem solving, it's notification or giving you an idea where to focus, but then working with your consultants on what's the tactics or strategies we're going to apply to fix what we now know is a problem, rather than I've got to remember to go investigate repro. Well, I don't need to do that anymore. You know, you could tell AI, hey, when you see our repro get to a certain level, notify me and tell me what you see is wrong. So now it becomes more interactive.
Running low on time here, so if you want to give your final thoughts, anything else you want to leave the group with, and see if they have any questions. But
yeah, again, I think I would just suggest that dairy producers get ready. Time's gonna fly really fast. Things are changing really quickly. You know, I've had a dairyman recently ask, well, am I going to be forced to go to this stuff? Not by us. We'll go at the pace we can. But in the very near future, I believe that Apple Store and Google Store will stop allowing sales or downloading of apps, because it's going to go away. These shifts away from apps, cell phones. If you think about the replacement to a cell phone, it's going to be a device for visualization. I'll see any report that I want, or a chart, or whatever, or a list of animals. It's really for visualization. So we can drag our feet a little bit so that we don't get too far ahead of dairy producers. but we're going to move as fast as the dairy producer needs. But also we're kind of in a trap where technology will force us to abandon certain technologies because they will no longer support it or it's no longer available. So I would say go out, understand as a dairy owner, manager, what's happening in AI, what's happening in robotics, and really pay attention to Milc Group. If you have questions, you could reach out to me. I'm more than willing to have a conversation about what I know and what I'm learning, or any one of our teammates that can help you. So ask questions, pay attention, and I think you're going to find that as you start to investigate this, you'll be blown away about how fast this is changing. Yes, I'm reading from Greg. Can breeders or herdsmen converse? Absolutely. It's going to be all people that the dairy producer has brought into the platform. Again, dairy producer owns all data, so they have to invite people in, and they will have the same access to Mira, to do breedings, to nutritionists to look at feed, all of those things. It's not limited to just the owner. The owner or the admin decides who has access to what they can and cannot see or do. So yes, it's all cow side as well. We've built all our products to be that way already. So it's live. If I enter data, it goes automatically and syncs, and so you could have two people doing a vet check in the same pen because everything is live. So it's real time, as they say, or at least close to it. But yes, any employee, any consultant will integrate with it. Any other questions from you?
I think one just came up. Hey, yours is faster than mine over there.
Okay. Will dog robots be putting milk units on? Well, I'll tell you what. Not necessarily dog robots, but I would say go out and look at some of the stuff. It's called Elon Musk's robot is called remind me, it is Optimus. Thank you. Optimus robot. He spent a ton of time working on the humanoid robot's dexterity to have the same dexterity as a human being. I would bet you within 3 years that we have humanoid robots milking cows on a rotary. Not so much a dog robot. I see them as pushers. I think I see them as perimeter. I could see them looking or checking. For example, I'm irrigating. Where's the water? Feed bunk management. They have LiDAR built into them, so they could walk the feed bunks, read the feed bunks, tell our feed program, okay, you got to feed heavier to the first 30% of this bunk. This pen is out of feed. Bringing in cows, moving animals from dry to close-ups. I could see the dog doing a lot of that, and humanoids doing more dexterity things that need hands.
I'll talk a little bit, now I have a question. Talk a little bit about labor is being more difficult to find, or good labor is more difficult to find.
Yes.
So talk about how technology, even maybe these robots or just AI, is going to help maybe lower the blow of finding good labor right now.
Yeah, I in the conversations that I've been having with many of these robotic companies, one in particular has done a lot of research in ag, general, not just dairy, but ag, and have been paying attention to immigration and the problem that we're having with labor within ag. And their comment is that their goal is to remove the need for 25% of the labor force. Because anything on your dairy that is routine, that sensors can benefit from, or routine, can be replaced with a human. I mean, with a robot can replace a human. So, I think that the quicker we can utilize some of these robotics lowers the human element. Although we're always going to need really good humans, and I'll say it this way, is that anything that's an art requires a human. Robotics is not really good, and I don't mean art like drawing and music. I mean, impressions, gut feelings, emotional view of an animal. We can sometimes pick up things just being around animals that a sensor would struggle with, at least today. And being that human connection to animal is really important. But what that will allow us to do is the human element to our team augmented with the intellect of the AI and the robotics is going to be a very, very powerful match, and it's going to change the way we manage animals significantly. Any other questions? Okay, anything else from you?
No,
okay. All right, I really appreciate, hopefully this was helpful. If this is something that you want to do in the future, comment back to us, and we'd be more than willing to do it on any topic that we may have some information or knowledge about. But I really appreciate your time, and hopefully this was helpful. So thank you to all, and we'll talk soon, I hope. Bye-bye.